actual production of pookies, you'll always be able to lock them up and let them out. Lock them up and let them out. When you want to decrease the real estate of these surrounding areas, you let them out and let them run in the street and terrorize the streets. When you want to increase the real estate and start selling off property, then you lock them all up and you increase the price. So the Pookie production plant, which is the New York Metropolitan Housing Authority, is detrimental and crucial for the rising and falling and control of the real estate prices in New York City. It's one of the reasons.
Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another video. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking. All right. So what we have today is an article from The Hill, and what this article is talking about is a DC crime bill that's creating big problems for the Democrats. All right. And also, we're going to go back over the money that Kathy Hochul is promising the people of New York, all right, and why she's getting that money and where that money is going. Because as we all know, all money ain't good money, all right? But when it comes to this DC crime bill, my first question is, how many people were aware of that? And the second question that I have is, did you all vote for the Democrats to put in place another crime bill? Because when it comes to Democrat crime bills, historically, why do those crime bills exist? Well, one of the reasons why the crime bills exist is because Democrats in black areas create legislation that routes money outside of black communities to perpetuate a low economic environment. And as we all know, the economy is what creates crime, unlike what most people in the United States believe, not their race. All right. So now here it says why a DC crime bill is creating big problems for Democrats. All right. Senate Republicans are trying to put the squeeze on Democrats ahead of an expected vote on legislation next week that would undo parts of a District Columbia crime bill. The bill would eliminate most mandatory sentences, lower penalties for a number of violent offenses, including carjackings and robberies, and expand the requirement for jury trials in most misdemeanor cases. So as you guys can see, what this crime bill basically does is it makes it where criminals can easily get back out into the street. And we all know that the reason why the Democrats make it appear as if they are, quote unquote, pro-criminal justice reform is because they utilize certain criminals, push them through the criminal justice system, then release them back into the streets to control and push down the real estate prices so they can bring their private investors in and then gentrify the neighborhoods. All right. So now here it says the legislation was unanimously approved by the DC City Council, which then overrode a veto by Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bauer in an overwhelming 2-1 vote. The GOP-led House passed a resolution of disapproval that would block the implementation of the law. It's that resolution the Senate is expected to vote on next week, and it is likely to pass despite the Democratic Senate majority and the party's usual support for the DC home rule. The reasons are a mix of the political and circumstantial. Senator John Fetterman is expected to miss the vote as he gets treatment for clinical depression, which narrows the Democratic majority to 59-40. Senator Joe Manchin says he'll vote in favor of the resolution, saying the legislation doesn't make sense to him. Other Senate Democrats, particularly those like Manchin, who face difficult re-election races in red or purplish states in 2024, may vote with him. In the House, 31 Democrats joined Republicans in the back of the resolution for disapproval. So make no mistake, this right here is evidence that the Democrats and the Republicans can work together when it's something that they want to get accomplished, usually something anti-black or something harmful for black people. Any other time, they act as if they're in a cat fight. But if you pay very close attention and read all of the line items, those are not cat fights at all. They are two parties working together in unison to wage quiet war on black people in America and maintain the bottom floor. Okay. So now here it says, if it passes, President Biden will face a somewhat difficult decision. While it is expected that he will veto the resolution of disapproval and argue that it is a serious infringement on the DC home rule, the idea that the District of Columbia has the authority in the city and should be able to govern itself, the veto will undoubtedly be used by the GOP in campaign ads and arguments for the rest of the cycle. And the danger of being a Democrat, seen as soft on crime, was reinforced Tuesday when Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot failed to advance from her own re-election primary amid public anger over the issue. Senate Democrats, by and large, have declined to jump on board to overturn the DC bill, given their long-standing support for the district's self-governance. But Republicans are signaling confidence. They appear to think more Democrats in the Senate than Manchin will be with them on a vote next week. Why the DC City Council, against the wishes of the mayor and the same party, would be downgrading certain offenses, it just defies common sense. Senator Shelley Moore Capito told The Hill, I think it will be difficult for anybody to vote against the resolution, and I will think it will be difficult for the president to veto it. It's no huge surprise that Manchin, who told the New York Times that slashing mandatory minimum sentences makes no sense to him, would vote with the GOP on the issue. His state voted overwhelmingly for President Trump in the 2020 presidential elections. Other Democrats to watch include Senator Sherrod Brown and John Tester, who told reporters in recent days that they are undecided. Both face re-election in 2024 in states won by Trump in 2020. So pay very close attention to how these Democrats are switching their stance according to whether Trump won in those states. So Trump is a major indicator on how Democrats will flip-flop on their original stance, because these people are fickle, have no ethics, and stand for nothing. And it's a cultural thing, mind you. Senator Kristen Sinema, who usually votes with Democrats, is also seen as a gettable vote. Sinema's spokesperson told The Hill that she does not preview votes. Republicans point to Lightfoot, the latest Democrat office holder, to run into problems over her handling of crime, to argue that it will be political trouble for those who effectively vote to back the DC City Council. And again, so what you guys see right here is the Republicans giving the dog whistle on how it is that black mayors and black politicians get into black areas. They understand that the larger Democrats like J.B. Pritzker control the majority of the resources, and they put these black faces in these areas that have been financially strangulated in order to make it seem as if black people have representation. These black people are then set up to fail so that the population at large can then point the finger at the people and say, look, these people can't even govern themselves while they're not getting any resources. All right. And then once that happens, it makes it easy for Republicans to get whatever they want to. But you have to understand that while this is going on, the Democrats are not even trying. What they're actually doing is just buying their time, getting a paycheck, and then they'll be ready to exit stage left when the time comes. As you guys can see, that's what's going on with Mayor Eric Adams in New York City. Paul Vallis, the leading vote getter on Tuesday in the Chicago vote, ran on a tough on crime message and took nearly twice as many votes as Lightfoot. So everybody who is celebrating Lightfoot being ousted from office, when you all start to see increased police brutality and increased police state-sanctioned executions of black people in Chicago, please make sure that you stay silent, because if you say anything in my comment section, you will be barbecued to the bone. Okay. Think that the mayor of Chicago is probably a case in point, said Senator Tom Tillis. The lowering of penalties and other changes that has created a tough fence to straddle for Democrats as they overwhelmingly support statehood for the district. So now when it comes to, and what you need to pay attention to again, is take the emotions out of it. Stop crying and pay attention. Most Republicans are all about states' rights. That's one of the reasons why they fly the Confederate flag, despite the fact that they're grotesque, disgusting, anti-black racists. They also feel that states should have their rights, i.e. the right to Jim Crow, i.e. the right to segregation, i.e. the right to racism, i.e. to killing black people with impunity, i.e. the right to slavery. Okay, that's what the Republicans, the descendants of Confederacy, support. All right, now that is what DC wants, despite the fact that I don't agree with DC's policies. All right, but pay very close attention. DC wants to have its own individual governance and rule. If you guys remember, just a couple weeks ago, I did a live stream where we played a clip from Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Marjorie Taylor Greene herself said that she believes that each independent entity in the United States should be able to have its own self-representation until it's DC, until it's areas where black people would be able to represent and determine their own destiny. That is what these white supremacists in the United States have the biggest problem with, because they feel that the reason why black people are here are to perpetuate the growth first of white people and other favorable groups that whites deem as model minorities. And people aren't buying that and going with that narrative anymore, and it's not going to work. So now here it says Senator Dick Durbin III, the number 2 Senate Democrat, told The Hill that while his conference backs home rule powers, members are looking at the bill very closely because they also want this to be a safe city. The crime issue has touched a nerve in the district over nonstop reports of carjackings and robberies across the city. Homicides are up 30% this year from the same point last year. According to the Metropolitan Police Department's reporting, the district has seen 94 carjackings this year alone, with only 16 of those cases being closed and 9 arrests being made. 78% of those incidents have involved juveniles. Everyone's going to have to make up their own mind on this, and I respect that, said Senator Chris Van Hollen, who noted that he does not support the crime bill, quote unquote, on its own. Regardless of where you stand on the underlying issues as to what the DC government did, the United States should not be substituting its judgment for the elected representatives for the people of the District of Columbia, especially since almost every Senate Democrat supports DC statehood. While Bowser opposed the council's measures and in early February called for it to consider changes to minimization of penalties and issues surrounding jury trials, she has urged members of Congress to butt out of city-related issues. The White House has yet to issue a district veto threat against the resolution, though it has said that it opposes overruling the newly passed criminal code. Congress should respect the District of Columbia's autonomy to govern its own local affairs, the White House said in January, adding that it still supports D.C. statehood. The district was handed home rule powers in 1973, and Congress has not overturned any citywide enacted bill in more than 3 decades. Nevertheless, Republicans believe that the vote could put the president in a bind, especially as the crime situation worsens in the city. I think it'll be difficult. It'll be a difficult vote for anybody who believes in law and order to not be able to impact our capital city that has a higher rising crime rate, Capito said. All right, so there's that. So again, this is Democrat and Republican inconsistencies. And the main thing that needs to be pointed out, regardless of what side of the political spectrum that you are on, is how the Democrats and the Republicans will be inconsistent with their own message in order to perpetuate white supremacy, black dilution, and black containment. All right. And that's what you see here in the DC crime bill. All right. So we're going to go back over what Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Eric Adams are doing in New York in order to dilute black political power, which is the talking point of the Democrats. Hochul pledges $1 billion to the city for migrants. All right. No reinvestment into any other. Well, I shouldn't say into any other community, into the black community, because they're definitely reinvesting into the Asian community. They gave them $20 million and more. Mayor Eric Adams has been asking for support, but It isn't clearly but it isn't clear exactly what New York City will get, especially when it comes time for federal funding. All right. So one thing that you can assume is that when it comes to New York City, if the federal funding has anything to do with any community other than black people, for the most part, they'll probably get a majority of what they're asking for. Playing nice with the governor might be working out for New York City Mayor Eric Adams, at least when it comes to financial support for shelter and services for the recent wave of asylum seekers coming to the city. Governor Kathy Hochul pledged more than $1 billion in her executive budget released on Wednesday, even as the state's overall migrant funding plan seems to be based on a dream of more than $1 billion in federal funding that may never come. Still, Adams is likely to welcome whatever financial help he may get. The mayor has been banging the drum for months, saying the city needs help and shouldn't have to pay for everything on its own. But he largely resisted criticizing Hochul and President Joe Biden directly. Now, some of that money may be coming through. The bulk of the state money, as much as $767 million, would go towards covering a portion of the cost for the emergency shelters for migrants set up by the city. There would also be $25 million for resettlement funds and $10 million for legal assistance, Hochul's office explained to reporters on Wednesday. The governor's office also highlighted $162 million in spending on the state National Guard, which was activated to help with the increase of immigration to New York, and $137 million in state funding covering migrants' health needs. Adams City Hall has never been clear about just how much it is spending on the asylum seekers, instead opting for broad, round placeholders. First, $1 billion. More recently, $2 billion. So Hochul, too, said Wednesday that those numbers are an estimate. This is a transition period, so we don't know the exact number coming, she said at a press conference. But if the state's spending isn't clear, federal funding is even less so. Hochul's budget briefing book said the budget creates a framework for the financial burden of migrant services to evenly be split between the levels of government, 1/3 New York City, 1/3 state, and 1/3 federal. The specifics of this framework weren't immediately clear on Wednesday afternoon, but it wasn't clear where that support from Washington would be coming from. The latest bill included $800 million for local governments taking in asylum seekers, but only a portion of that is expected to go to the city. But Hochul said that Biden told her on his visit to the city Tuesday that more money would be coming from the federal government. And if it doesn't reach the level for this framework, we're going to keep asking the federal government for their assistance, she said. We have federal leaders with great influence in our state. Given that lack of clarity, Adams was rather cautious in his response to the state support he'd be asking for. I commend Governor Hochul for recognizing the need to provide state resources to assist with the ongoing asylum seeker crisis, and we look forward to reviewing her proposal in greater detail to ensure New York City gets its fair share of resources, Adams said in an emailed statement, adding, we will continue to need our federal and state partners to do their part, and we look forward to working in partnership with them. Speaker Adrienne Adams was more uniformly positive in her response. The inclusion of significant funding for our city provides services for people seeking asylum in our country is desperately needed and appreciated, she said, as part of a longer response to Hochul's budget. Hochul responded to some of Adams and others' asks in the budget too, including a series of proposals that would help the city convert office buildings in Midtown Manhattan to housing, as well as turn basement apartments into legal residences. She proposed allowing more charter schools in the city, which Adams has generally supported. Per Hochul's budget book, overall state spending going toward the city would be $1.35 billion higher than the previous year, led by $569 million increase in foundation aid for schools. But Adams immediately pushed back on Hochul's proposal to have the city contribute an additional $500 million to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority as part of her new funding plan. The city gives about $2 billion annually to the MTA already, Adams said in his statement. And while we recognize the significant fiscal challenges the MTA faces, we are concerned that this increased commitment could further strain our already limited resources. But Adams, playing nice with his ally in Albany, closed with a compliment. Governor Hochul has been and continues to be a strong partner for the city, and we look forward to working with her and the legislator in the months ahead to ensure that New York City has the resources it deserves. So now when Eric Adams really wants something, you see he can really sweet talk Kathy Hochul into just making those pockets blow up all over the place. But when it comes to anything that we may need, the only thing that Eric Adams has for us is a speech about drill rap, which half of us don't listen to anyway. All right. So the next article that we'll be looking at is an article from AP. All right. And it's talking about Kathy Hochul's $227 billion budget to help New York City transit and migrant response. So again, remember, one of the things that's important about the All Money Ain't Good Money series is that we need everybody to make sure that you keep track of the dollar amounts that are being spent, because what never happens in these situations is that people are never told, well, we don't have this money, because here it is right here. Okay. New York Governor Kathy Hochul proposed dramatic spending to help New York City handle a wave of international migrants and to stabilize its reeling public transit system with her $227 billion state budget on Wednesday, even as she warned of tougher economic times ahead. And we'll be talking about those very soon in a later video. The wide-ranging spending plan also includes a public university tuition hike, a 10% jump in school aid, and a proposal yet again to revise the state bill law, which is expected to meet resistance from liberal state lawmakers. The proposal kicks off weeks of intense negotiations with state legislative leaders as they try to agree on a finalized budget by the April 1st deadline. Hochul said caring for new migrants and the solvency of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which runs subways and other public transits in the downstate region, are among the most pressing issues facing the state. The MTA has been dealing with lower ridership and revenues since the pandemic. The New York City economy drives the state of New York. MTA helps drive the New York City economy. So it's critically important to all of us, Hochul said during her budget presentation. Hochul's MTA package relies in part on increasing a payroll tax on city area employees to raise $800 million annually. She also wants the authority to receive a share of the state money that will come in from up to 3 casinos planned for the New York City region. So now this is what I want people to understand. If a lot of these illegal migrants are not able to work, these illegal migrants are coming to New York City on a surplus because they're not working, and the working people of New York City's tax money is going towards paying for them to get established, while these people who are already established and living paycheck to paycheck are barely able to make their own bills. Okay, so now here it says Hochul called for $1 billion in extraordinary funding to provide services and help with migrant resettlement, which the costs divided among the state, city, and federal government. Hochul said President Joe Biden assured her that there would be federal money to help the city, though she said he did not give a number. Mayor Eric Adams said that the city has been overwhelmed with new arrivals and has criticized the practice of some governors who transport migrants straight from the border to the city. Well, if that's the case, then maybe what you should do is maybe you should criticize the open border policies, and maybe you should support tightening the borders with whatever resources can be used to do that. But until you do that, I'm assuming, other than the other initiative that they have, which is breaking up black political power, they're going to continue to do that. But again, we know that, and that's why you're acting like you have no solution to it, because you're taking a paycheck from the government to do the government's bidding, and the Republicans and the Democrats are both departments of the same company. So it's not like they're actually fighting. And that's one of the things that we have to understand. We have to look at how these things work together in terms of a systems model. And we have to take away the fake construct of Democrat and Republicans fighting, because the only people that the Democrats and the Republicans are fighting are black people. Okay. So now here it says, we will continue to need our federal and state partners to do their part, and we look forward to working in partnership with them, Adams said in a prepared statement that commended his fellow Democrat for committing state resources. Adams also said that the governor's proposal to have the city contribute about $500 million more annually for the MTA could further strain our already limited resources. The spending plan includes a number of policies announced last month during the Democratic governor's State of the State address, including $1 billion to provide psychiatric beds and services for people with mental illness, and a plan to spur the creation of 800,000 new homes, in part through changes in zoning rules. So basically, this is gentrification and low-income housing for migrants. And it's interesting what kind of services these are they plan on spending for the mentally ill, because I don't know if you guys are subscribed to Just Talking with TD and Rob. If you're not, make sure that you go and subscribe to it. But we talked over there about how New York City is working on an initiative to be able to just arrest people who appear to show mental health illness, with mental health being the probable cause that justifies the arrest. That's something that people might want to look into. Okay. Hochul made the spending proposal even with a possible national recession looming. The state tax collections are expected to fall in the coming fiscal year, and the administration projected multi-billion-dollar out 1 year budget gaps. Acting State Budget Director Sandra Beatty said a current $8.7 billion surplus will help the state weather an economic downturn. The budget would raise the state cigarette tax from $4.35 to $5.35 per pack. Washington, D.C. currently has the highest excise tax nationwide at $4.50, according to the Federation of Tax Administrators. The budget would also provide the sale of all flavored tobacco products as opposed to just flavored vaping products. The administration said the moves will reduce the number of young smokers. Well, it'll also increase the amount of tax money that they can spend on immigrants. You know what I'm saying? Under Hochul's proposal, the state and city colleges would increase tuition annually by either 3% or an amount tied to the higher education price index, whichever is less. The state's university centers would have the flexibility to raise tuition 6% points above the system's base tuition rate each year for the next 5 years for in-state students. State Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie said the tuition increase proposal is one that would be tough for the confidence during the budget deliberations. We don't want tuition to be raised on the students. We're going to have to figure out a way to pay for it, the Democrat said. Hochul also wants to make more revisions to the state's bail law, which was changed in 2019 to do away with pretrial incarceration of people who have nonviolent offenses. The law has been tweaked since, but Republicans and some moderate Democrats continue to argue rules deprive judges of a tool they could use to hold people who are likely to commit new crimes. So what you see is that New York is having the same interesting issue that Washington, D.C. is having. Okay. So pay very close attention to that, because that in most cases is probably going to be an ongoing struggle that Republicans and Democrats fake like the WWF for the public eye in each of the 50 states. Okay. Budget briefing documents say Hochul wants to give judges greater discretion by removing the least restrictive means standard to ensure a defendant returns to court, as opposed to considering how dangerous they appear. The governor said the current guidelines are not always clear and that she wants to provide clarity for the judges. So this goes into the deeper picture of why the states strain the resources, why they put all of these people into the projects, and why they give these criminals lenient sentences. It's because they have a Pookie production plant, and the Democrat cities need a Pookie production plant in order to be able to control and fluctuate the real estate for how they want to gentrify and bring in more capital to the city. As long as you have a perpetual production of Pookies, you'll always be able to lock them up and let them out, lock them up and let them out. When you want to decrease the real estate of these surrounding areas, you let them out and let them run in the street and terrorize the streets. When you want to increase the real estate and start selling off property, then you lock them all up and you increase the price. So the Pookie production plant, which is the New York Metropolitan Housing Authority, is detrimental and crucial for the rising and falling and control of the real estate prices in New York City. It's one of the reasons why the same people that own the rap labels are the same people that own the real estate companies. Because if you can put out a perpetual message to implant in people's brains to go around and terrorize the streets, then you can turn around and talk to your cousins who are in politics like Bloomberg and say, we need to lock all these people up, raise the real estate, then get all the insurance money. It's all a hustle and people need to wake up to it. Okay. So now here it says State Senator Jessica Ramos, a Democrat who represents Queens, gave a frosty response to the bail proposal. I'm not keen on budgeting any of the bail reform work that we have done. Ramos said, it is incomplete work, and I'm hoping that the response to it is actually to build the mental health care facilities that we need so that New Yorkers who are engaging in harm doing can actually receive the services and given the treatment that they deserve. Maysoon Khan is a corps member for the Associated Press. Okay, so that's the end of this article. All right, so basically what you guys see is we went full circle. We started out in Washington, D.C., and we ended in New York with all of the money that New York is going to be paying out for the migrant crisis, for the New York City transit, and for updates with New York City's infrastructure. And basically what we can see is when they want something, the money's available. When they want something, they can work bipartisan. And what you guys need to understand is that black degeneracy that's manufactured by the United States government and its associate tentacles, which would be Hollywood, which would be the media, which would be sports, which would be the Breakfast Club, which would be Roland Martin, which would be all of that nonsense, are necessary in order to maintain not only the bottom class, but also necessary to maintain the revenues coming in as we fluctuate the real estate prices. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think about this video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice, smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and I will catch you all on the next video. All right? Peace.